Okay, let's go. Let's do some talking, Rupert. Yes, Mama's going to do talking. Hello, lovely people. If you're new here, hi, I'm Jessica. I generally use this channel to share amusing, educational videos about disabilities, chronic illness, and LGBTQ+ stuff. Sometimes joined by my lovely wife, and sometimes we just make crafty or silly things just because. Feel free to subscribe. But we are also new parents to an almost 4-month-old lovely little boy named Rupert, who you might be able to hear because he is on the floor like right there playing with his ribbons. That's his new thing this week. Who we have been Montessoriing from birth, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. Most of you watching this are probably asking, what is Montessori? Likely because I've made that the title of the video, but also because it's the question we're asked the most by family, friends, and people we meet through baby things. And it's also not a very easy thing to condense down. Fun fact, the founder, Maria Montessori, believed that you didn't properly become an adult until you stopped developing at 24, and modern brain scans and research now back this up. So don't panic, it's not just you who's like 18 is a bit young, suddenly running around. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what Montessori is, why we love it as a family, and how you can apply it to even little babies. What is Montessori? The Montessori method of education was developed by Maria Montessori, the first female Italian doctor in the early 20th century. Working with children who came from incredibly poor backgrounds, she used the powers of observation she'd honed in her training as a scientist and doctor to design a school that would appeal to their nature rather than fight it. For example, children are kinetic learners who like to use their hands and to move, so she designed a system that has them using 3D materials to learn about maths and spelling. And the activities are on a tray, fetched from a shelf and brought to a table, then put away again, then something else that you have to go and get. So you're not constantly trying to keep a child sat in their seat, because they store up all of their energy until break time where they run manically around the playground. Instead, you're constantly having them moving around and dispelling a little bit at a time. Doing away with how schools have been seen in the past, Dr. Montessori created a child-led teaching method that puts children into a prepared environment where children can freely choose the activities they want to do. Prepared means that everything around them is already ready for the child to use. They don't need our help to use things or get things out, and everything is appropriate for their developmental level. Not so easy that they'll master it quickly and get bored, but not so challenging that they'll be completely unable to complete it alone given time and effort. The traditional teacher role is also different in the Montessori classroom, since they're referred to as a guide, and their role is to observe the children and introduce them to materials they haven't used before at the time that they're ready for them individually, rather than stand at the front of the classroom and teach everyone the same thing at exactly the same time, which just assumes that every person in a classroom is at the same place developmentally, which obviously they aren't. Since learning is child-directed, the guide isn't needed by everyone at once, so this is entirely possible. I love the emphasis on children being naturally eager for knowledge and capable of initiating learning themselves. I think it's really weird that we have this culture of assuming we have to force children into doing school, and then thinking that not only will forcing them to do something help it go into their brain, but also make them want to continue with that learning once you stop forcing them. I love to research, read, and learn new things, particularly about history or popular science, but I can't tell you anything I learned in school from either of those subjects, because school was incredibly boring. Another big difference, there's no set timetable of 30-minute chunks for each subject, chopping and changing throughout the day, but rather long, uninterrupted, unscheduled work periods of generally 2 or 3 hours, depending on age, to promote concentration. Although children in the Montessori classroom choose where to sit and what to work on, they can't just run around and distract everyone else, or only choose one thing over and over and over again every single day. Children are also shown from a young age how to be respectful of materials they're working with through modelling. The guide shows how to behave through her own actions. Order and structure are very important within the classroom, as seen as key to helping a child thrive, as is giving them the responsibility to uphold the order themselves. This isn't something placed upon them. The children know the boundaries, and they know they do not change. For instance, they know that at the end of using each material, they have to neatly put it back on the shelf. and then after lunch the children wipe down their own tables. The key concept here is that allowing children to make their own choices and learn at their own pace builds confidence, independence and self-esteem, which then creates a good foundational love of lifelong learning. If children are encouraged to ask their own questions and discover their own answers, then they can develop a deeper level of understanding in their physical, social, emotional and cognitive abilities through exploring the world around them and using their imagination. It just sounds really fun. When we first found out about Montessori, Claudia and I were like, yes, send me back in time. This is the school I want to go to. As people, we all have different styles of learning, so obviously Montessori isn't going to be everyone's dream, but we are both hands-on learners who love researching, experimenting and discovering things on our own time, but didn't enjoy school, even though on paper we did well. I'm dyslexic and I found school really boring because it just didn't teach me in the way I needed to learn. Yes, I did well on tests, but only because I did a lot of learning outside of the classroom. I can read really well, but I cannot spell at all, and I don't really understand questions. I went to a special dyslexia school after normal school hours who taught language in a way that isn't too dissimilar to what you'll see in a Montessori classroom with the movable alphabet. I also had a tutor, and before school age my mother taught me maths concepts using 3D materials in a similar way to the Montessori bead method. I loved learning when I was young, but school eventually just knocked it out of me, and it wasn't until I was an adult that I rediscovered it. I don't want my children to lose that love, ever. I want them to follow their natural instincts and curiosity and learn experientially, and whilst they're having fun discovering things for themselves rather than just hearing about concepts and expecting that to sink in immediately. We also really liked the Montessori emphasis on educating the whole child, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially and mentally. Learning about subtraction is considered just as important as learning about the diversity of cultures in the world, which is considered just as important as learning how to stand on one leg whilst holding a glass of water, or diffuse a conflict between friends, all of which are pretty cool life skills really. We also really like the individualism of the curriculum, not only because every student in a classroom will have different interests, but because they're just all at different levels academically. It sucks to be told you can't read ahead because everyone else reads at a slow pace, but it sucks way more when you didn't quite understand yesterday's maths problem, so now you have no chance of catching up and understanding today's. I also had the difficulty of switching schools when I was young, and then also when I was a teenager, and there was just such a big gap there that I completely missed a lot of things in the change. And Montessori, that wouldn't have happened because it wouldn't have been about, oh no, teachers have changed. It's about me. My education moves with me. It comes with me. It's directed within myself. Montessori emphasizes the importance of listening to children of all ages, which you know I advocate for on this channel. In fact, it seems important to treat even the youngest babies with the same dignity and respect as you would a fellow adult. I really appreciate that, especially as someone who, due to my disabilities, sometimes needs a little extra care. Yes, please do ask my permission before you move my body and wait for me to register that. Even if you have to do it anyway. Please show me my shoe and talk to me about it before you put it on my foot. Please act as if I am fully capable, even when I'm not. Accessibility and inclusion were even built into the Montessori way of education from the very beginning. As Maria Montessori first began working with children who had developmental delays and was co-director of an institute for teachers who worked with disabled children. Many of the Montessori concepts serve neurodiverse students well and are a less pressurized environment for children with other disabilities. You're not marked against your peers for one, and you're in a mixed age group classroom with the same adult for 3 years at a time, so there's a lot of familiarity to get comfortable with, but enough diversity that you don't stand out. Oh boy, do I remember the feeling of being that kid. Claudia and I wanted to make sure that our parenting philosophy just follows our child and is adaptable, however they turn out to be. We like that there aren't hard and fast rules and milestones in Montessori. It's not about making your child the best or having them do things before other children, it's just observing them. Honestly, I have read enough Montessori parenting books to know that it's about training me as a parent, nothing to do with forcing my baby to do something. And speaking of that baby, Montessori seems great, and I've covered why we like it, but how on earth are we applying these things with a 4-month-old baby? Well, people are often surprised to learn that Montessori principles can apply from birth, or even before. So, Maria Montessori noted from her observations that even the youngest babies were not passive, but were instead active seekers who were looking to build impressions of the world. And it's true, even from our very first moments, our little ones are taking everything in and building a picture of the world around them, and we have the honour of helping to shape that. Don't panic. It's not actually as heavy as it sounds. It does sound quite heavy. Okay, here are some of the simple ways that we are applying Montessori to babyhood, and maybe some ideas you can use with your baby. How to touch your baby, talk to your baby, play with your baby, and set up your home. Number 1, how to touch your baby. Gently touch with their permission in a respectful way. I was explaining this to a friend of mine the other day who was a baby and thought that I was a little bit loopy. But yes, I do talk to my child as if he is an adult who is just at the moment incapable of moving his own limbs fully and therefore needs my help to do things. So before I pick him up, I ask him his permission to do so. I wait for that to register with him. Generally, he smiles at me because he's 4 months old and he now understands when I say pick up and do the sign for pick up. Sometimes when he's playing, he doesn't actually want me to pick him up. So I'll say, okay, well, I understand you don't want me to pick you up right now. I will let you play for a little moment, but then I will come back and try again in 5 minutes because I do actually need to change your nappy. So I described this before in the video we made about a life in our day with a newborn, but when I'm dressing him, it's a collaborative thing. So I will hold his arm of his cardigan open and get him to push his little arm through it rather than pushing the cardigan arm onto his arm, and ask his permission as I'm doing things. Just tell him everything that's going on, really narrating things to him. This extends also to free movement. We try to restrain his body movements as little as possible and allow him free movement. We have a movement mat in our kitchen where he lies down and can fully move his body, explore. But yeah, he likes to stretch, he likes to roll. We wouldn't want to confine him or stop him from doing that. In terms of keeping things non-restrictive, this extends to clothing, which I know that's the bit I find hardest about Montessori. Montessori doesn't have rules exactly when it comes to clothing, but it's important that your clothing, children and babies, is non-restrictive, that it's easy to move in, that it isn't hindering their movement in any way, to keep their feet uncovered as much as possible, because feet for a baby are the same as their hands. They need to be able to grip with their little toes. They, to start with, don't really know the difference between their feet and their hand. Number 2, talking to your baby. Speaking with a rich language. Dr. Montessori promoted the idea that babies understand everything, even from a young age, even if they cannot yet answer back. So it's very important that we don't use language that isn't correct. Oh, language like doggy or boo-boo instead of dog. So from the very earliest age, we've also been speaking to Rupert in the same way that we speak to each other. We also sign to him because we use sign language at home. We like to have little conversations with him and assume that he is replying. To be fair though, he's actually incredibly chatty. He's since about 2 months old, he's just been the chattiest baby. So he replies back now. I think because we've from the very start left pauses, spaces for him to answer. Like, oh, do you Wow, do you hear Tilly barking? Yeah, I know, gosh, she's really going at it today. And now he answers back and he's like, so whenever it seems like he might maybe be babbling with his fingers, we always try to replicate that. So in the same way that when we try to repeat his babbling when he's just making sounds with his mouth, we try to repeat his babbling when he is signing. So he likes to do page turn. So if I see him doing that because he wants to read a book, then I'll do it back to him. It's all about how we're learning to take turns in a conversation. Number 3, playing with your baby. So you can already lay the foundations for the way they explore and how they feel about themselves by giving them the opportunity to work out how things respond to their touch, just allowing them time to see their space and see how things respond to their efforts already. So this means that instead of giving a toy that does something by itself, for instance, the type where you push a button and then it plays a sound and it flashes a light, which isn't necessarily teaching the child like cause and effect, because it's circuitry. You're learning about circuitry. It's more learning about the world. So having a ball run, you could see if you tip this, then the ball runs from one end to the other, and then you tip it, and the ball runs back, and you're like, intriguing, what? Then we have the Montessori mobiles, which are created to help your baby's brain develop, such as the Minari black and white mobile, which is balanced against a glass sphere. So the baby can watch it as it spins around. This is one of Rupert's real favourites. He found it, to start with, he just kind of stared at it for a really long time. It helps their vision start to really focus and come together, and he became really good at just tracking it and would stare at it for ages and ages, just watching as the little cards moved around. But then one day a gust of wind caught it and it started to move quite quickly, and I don't know, he thought it was hilariously funny and he started laughing, and it was the first time that we sort of seen him do this kind of giggly laugh. And then we move on to the octahedron mobile, which it's also really nice that you can make all of these yourself. So the octahedron mobile, which is made of reflective primary colours and also bounces all of the light off. The next mobile, the Gobi mobile, which then introduces different shades of colours. That one, Rupert started hitting himself. He was like boffing. Realised that he could reach up and touch it and it would spin. It was this moment of realisation for him, and also for us, because we were like, we need to move him on to the next mobiles that he can properly bash around. It was lovely for him to work out distance and see which of these balls he could touch and which was further away. And you just wouldn't get that if we'd had some kind of motorised mobile that had just spun itself around. I wouldn't have got that if we'd had a motorised mobile. He would have really missed out on that. And then once we were able to grasp, which was around 3 months, we then put curtain rings and tied things to them and put those on elastic, and then he's been having a lot of fun the last month just having fun with curtain rings that have got things attached to them, and baby teething rings as well. So I often get asked on my Instagram when I'm sharing things that he's enjoying, how do I know what to offer my baby? And the answer is always just to watch them and observe. If they lose interest really quickly, also if they're just not interested, it may be too difficult. We have to allow for some struggle. So we hung up the grasping things before he was able to grasp and let him bash at them when he was still just in that bashing stage. But we knew that there was the possibility that he was about to start grasping. Learning through play is key in the Montessori approach, and toys are really specially designed to stimulate the senses and to help with learning and other areas of development. So Montessori toys are designed in a way that encourage children to experiment, to be really creative, to help them develop motor skills and to play with them independently at their own pace. He does things to his toys, they don't do things by themselves. Number 4, setting up your home. A baby has an unconscious, absorbent mind. They're taking in impressions of the world around them without any effort. So it's important to put beautiful things in front of them and to think about what they can see from their level. So spend some time on the floor and check they're not spending too much time staring at clutter that's been shoved under the sofa. That was us before. But instead have nice things to see at their own eye level, like maybe a nice picture hung low down. Less is more. It's definitely always better to have less than you think, and rather than needing to buy a lot, just let your child have fun with some, household items too. A baby is always going to be able to choose more easily when there's less available, and then they can more deeply explore those items. Rupert has a little shelf in our kitchen, and he currently has 5 toys on it, 3 of which can also be hung from a frame. Natural materials are also really important. In Montessori, there's also importance made of offering natural materials and fibres, for example, wood, your metals, fabrics, because babies love to grasp and explore, particularly with their mouths. And muted colours are important because it helps a baby to focus. Also important to note, uninterrupted periods in babyhood. Don't break the baby's concentration. Is that a thing you've ever heard before? We started with this from day 1, with not moving him if he was looking in a certain direction and just allowing him periods of time to study the room. We had this amazing moment when he was 13 days old, I think, and I remember we were just in awe of him. We lay him down next to his doll Agnes, and he turned his head and stared at her and just tried to turn his entire body to reach her. For 15 whole minutes, he just quietly tried to worm his way over to her, and we were completely amazed. It seems so strange now when we say that we have a baby who can happily play by himself for an hour or longer, but that's just because it built up. To start with, I was probably a little overboard with it and was scared to pick him up from his floor mat if he was looking at himself in the mirror in case I just completely destroyed his concentration forever. But if we actually had somewhere to be, babies give you a lot of chances and you are not going to destroy your child forever by not being perfect 100% of the time. Honestly, be your version of perfect 5% of the time and you probably deserve a gold medal. Concentration doesn't have to be something that's separate from you though, it can be something that you're also actively involved in and you're doing together, such as in reading a book. Rather than turning the page once I've finished reading the words, I wait until he's finished looking and digesting the entire 2-page spread in front of him. So it's a children's book after all, but I know he's finished once he looks away. There's a bit about Montessori. The important things to note is that it's not about getting your kids to be the first to walk. It's just about the first to walk or the first to do anything. You're just making your baby feel competent, confident and excited to constantly explore, learn and grow. Also, I'm not nearly Montessori trained, I'm just a mum, so there are many other people who I'm sure can do a much better job explaining it, and I will leave many links in the description down below where you can go and check. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you'd like more like this, and I shall see you in my next video.